Everyone, today we're going to start talking about the beginning of the Second World War. Some of this information will be reviewed from earlier in the week, but a lot of this will be new information about what was going on in Europe prior to the United States entering the Second World War. Okay, so as we saw earlier this week, Adolf Hitler in Germany began to violate the Treaty of Versailles, and one of the ways they began to do that was by expanding their territory, and they started with the country of Austria. They reunified Austria and Germany, and Hitler called this reunification because a lot of people in Austria were German. They spoke German. They had very German culture. So he just decided that it made sense to join the two countries together, and this eventually became known as the Anschluss. Right, and I may be mispronouncing that, but it means the unification of Austria and Germany. Shortly after that, Hitler began to make more demands, this time of Czechoslovakia, specifically the area right inside the Czech border with Germany and Austria, known as the Sudetenland. And very similar to Austria, this is an area that was very German, very similar to German culture. Germany began to demand this land as well. The Czechs, they actually began to resist a little bit. They did not give in immediately to Germany's demands. And so France and the Soviet Union and Britain, they kind of saw what was going on here, and they essentially told Germany that they would fight if Germany decided to go after Czechoslovakia. So they decided to get together for a meeting in September of 1938, where in order to hopefully prevent another war, they decided to give in to what Hitler wanted. And this is a policy that became known as appeasement, giving in to demands in order to avoid conflict. So Germany ended up taking the Sudetenland in October of 1938, but by March, Germany went ahead and sent their troops into Czechoslovakia and taking the entire country. He then turned his attention to Poland, and he began to demand. Hitler began to demand two things of Poland. First of all, the port city of Danzig. Germany wanted that back. And they also wanted a railroad to cross the Polish corridor here to connect Germany and East Prussia, because this was divided, this was split up after the First World War. But the fact that Germany was continuing to make demands of neighbors kind of indicated to Britain and France that appeasement did not work. Okay? This was something that they were hoping would help avoid a war, and it seemed like they were kind of on the path towards another conflict. Right? And in May of 1939, Hitler ordered the invasion of Poland by the German army. Now, it didn't happen immediately or anything. It wouldn't happen for quite some time still. But in the meantime, between the preparation of the invasion of Poland and the actual invasion, Germany and the USSR signed a non-aggression pact, which we talked about earlier this week, called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, commonly just referred to as a non-aggression treaty. And within that treaty, they decided that they were going to split Poland between the two of them. All right, so this was an odd relationship, considering that Germany was fascist, the USSR was communist, and they did not really care for each other. Okay, so I want you to pause the video here and try to answer this question real quick. See what you guys come up with. Why did Britain and France agree to Hitler's demand for the Sudetenland? So pause the video and then jot down your answer, and then you can unpause it. Okay. But the answer is that they were trying to avoid war due to the policy known as appeasement. All right, so on September 1st, 1939, Germany and the USSR officially invade Poland. And a few days later, Britain and France, they declare war on Germany. And this officially starts World War II. And this is something, that Poland doesn't really put up too much of a fight here. They're pretty outmatched, and they're being attacked on two different sides. The Germans used a strategy that they made famous in World War II called Blitzkrieg, and that means lightning war. They just attacked very, very quickly. This was something that they were going to use very effectively throughout the war, due to their ability to mobilize quickly and hit places quickly and very powerfully with their infamous tank divisions. And the Polish army was defeated by October 5th, so a little more than a month. In April of 1940, so the following year, the German army decided to move north. So they take out Poland. Right? They then turn their attention to Denmark and to Norway, and these countries are done within a month. Again, the strategy of Blitzkrieg is something that's used very, very effectively for the Germans. Okay. After the First World War, because again, Germany's now going to turn their attention west towards France. And after the First World War, France kind of learned their lesson here. And they actually built this line of fortifications right through this area here, the border between France and Germany, known as the Maginot Line. And these were really, really, well constructed forts and weapons. And France decided to make these guns, essentially these giant artillery guns in the Maginot Line, not be able to turn all the way around. So that way, if they were ever captured, they couldn't be used against them. Well, instead of attacking France directly at the Maginot Line, Germany decided to go around, going through the Netherlands, going through Belgium, going through Luxembourg, completely avoiding the Maginot Line in general. It was a very similar path that they took during the First World War. And when this happened, the French forces and the British forces, they go to meet the Germans in Belgium, and they got trapped there. They were kind of in trouble almost immediately. By June 4th, there were 338,000 British and French troops that were trapped in the city of Dunkirk. Okay. This was a port city that they completely surrounded. The Germans had completely surrounded on all sides, and somehow the British were able to evacuate a vast majority of the troops here. Originally, they were thinking they were going to save about 40,000, and they did end up saving 338,000. There were some that were captured. They lost almost all their equipment here in Dunkirk, but this was kind of seen as a moral victory. People from all over the United Kingdom, not just military, but private civilians, anybody who had a boat was essentially crossing the English Channel here and saving as many soldiers as they could. There was a movie entitled Dunkirk that came out a few years ago. It's a decent movie, but if that's a story that you're interested in, movie may be worth watching. So eventually, after surrounding and knocking out the troops at Dunkirk, the Germans move further into France, and by June 22nd of 1940, France surrenders to Germany. In World War I, they kind of held off the Germans for about 4 years. In this case, they were they were done with fighting the French. The Germans were done fighting the French within about 4 or 5 months. So again, another time to pause the video here, jot down an answer, and we'll get into to an answer that I came up with here shortly. Okay, so why did France fall to Germany? Okay, so while they did have this very strong fortification known as the Maginot Line, Hitler simply went around it. The French and the British ended up getting trapped at Dunkirk, and after those troops were evacuated, there was not a whole lot of resistance left by the French and the British to stop the Germans. Okay, so Hitler was kind of under the impression that once France surrendered, the British people would be quick to surrender. He didn't really anticipate the British standing up to him for so long by themselves. But a lot of it has to do with this guy here, which is Winston Churchill, who was the British Prime Minister. He was a very reassuring, very calming figure for the British people, that essentially told the the British people that we're going to get through this. Um, and this was not only something that the British people rallied around, but also kind of let the United States know that, hey, we're in trouble, we need help, and a lot of people began to kind of uh, be swayed towards the Allied cause here. Not that they weren't already, but a lot of people became very sympathetic to the British at this point. In order to invade Britain, Germany was in a little bit more of a pickle here because with all these other countries they've been invading, they were all they had to drive there, right? They all had to do is get their troops there. But Britain is an island, so they have to cross the English Channel, and the Germans knew that they were not going to be able to do this safely as long as the British Air Force, known as the Royal Air Force, was still active. So the first step to the invasion of Britain was to take out the British Air Force in what would become known as the Battle of Britain. And this is where the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, targeted specific Air Force targets, trying to take out the British Air Force. And the Germans at one point accidentally bombed London. They I don't know if it was bad weather or it was at night and they couldn't really see, but they bombed London on accident, and the British responded by bombing Berlin. All right. Actually, I'm gonna back up there again. I'm not done talking about this one. Once they bombed Berlin, Hitler kind of changed his strategy from bombing the Royal Air Force to just terrorizing the people of London, hoping to demoralize them enough that they would eventually drop out of the war. Fortunately for the British, even though the Royal Air Force was outnumbered, a technology that had been developed and was starting to be put to a lot of really good use, called radar, were alerting the British of the German Luftwaffe incoming, so the British fighters could be ready for them. So this was a very big advantage that the British had here, that they were never surprised, they were never caught off guard by the Germans. And as a result, this battle, this quote unquote Battle of Britain, lasted months. Okay. So again, discussion question here: how did the British stop the German forces from invading Britain? Pause the video and jot down an answer. All right, the answer I came up with for this question was that they used radar to detect enemy planes, and they also bombed Berlin. Obviously, Berlin is going to be an important city in Germany. It is a capital city. There's a lot of manufacturing that goes on there. So this was a very important strategic city for Germany. And that's the end of the notes, but did you know? When Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned to Britain after the whole appeasement policy was adopted, he was celebrated. He gave this big, long speech about how they were able to maintain peace in our time. Ironically, a few months later, the entire continent of Europe seems to be at war. Okay? So now that you guys got a chance to jot down those notes, if you need to go back through this PowerPoint, it is there on Canvas for you. You can rewatch the video. Once you have finished this, you probably have time left in class today. I want you to be working on your Khan Academy materials. Okay, I was taking a look at that the other day, and not very many people have made very much progress through the Khan Academy stuff. So use the remainder of time today to continue working on Khan Academy. Email me or message me if you have any questions.